Welcome to another edition of Music Monday. I'm your host, Adam Duke. This week, I'm in the Wingin' It studio, speaking with Meat Raffle.
Hey, my name's Ian. We are Meat Raffle, and my meat name is Sirloin.
I'm Evan. My meat name is Captain Brisket, and I sing and play guitar.
My meat name or nickname is Meatball, but my actual name is Nick, so that is my nickname, and I play drums.
My name is Luke. I am known as Hamburger to like a few people, and I play keyboard and sometimes sing.
So we all have been musicians for quite a long time, and we were looking for somewhere to play. We all had played a bunch in church and got to a place where we just wanted to play different stuff. And at some point, I asked these guys and another guy who's a member of Ancient Spaceship, shout out, to jam. And for one reason or another, the four of us just kept playing together, and Dale had Ancient Spaceship, so he was just kind of doing his thing, and so we eventually started deciding, like, some of these jams are really cool, and we wanted to turn them into real songs, and this was like leading up to 2020, so we kind of had like a good 5 months, and then COVID hit, and that kind of weirdly solidified us as a band. We were, I don't know, these three and my wife were the only people I saw for like 3 months. And it was the one thing I think that all of us really kept steady in our like routines in life. It was a big rehearsal space, so we could kind of space out at the beginning, and they were the only ones in my bubble. So that's kind of how Meat Raffle started. At that point, we were recording our EP and just kind of doing everything DIY, figuring it out. It was fun and nightmarish to do that by yourself for your first time because there's a lot going into that. Well, I'm not native to Buffalo. I grew up in the southern tier, and when I moved to Buffalo, I went to Cheektowaga, found an apartment, and there's all these like old Catholic and Polish churches out there that are like Meat Raffle Friday, and you're like, what the heck is that? Like, I had no idea what a meat raffle was, and some like older people I knew explained it to me, and I'm like, that's wild and insane, and like the most Western New York thing I've ever heard in my life. And I think I just one day said, like, that'd be a dumb name. Let's do that.
Yeah, it was like we were kind of picking between that and another name, and personally I liked the other name, but we just sort of settled on Meat Raffle. And the cool thing too was Ian mentioned how a lot of these meat raffles happen at churches, and we kind of formed inside of a church, and we recorded our first album/EP inside of that church. So it was kind of just a cool experience having that sort of environment to record music in.
Nick had come up with the idea, Only Saturn is Left.
A little emo.
It was very emo, and I'm really glad we didn't do that because all of the music we write we're like, is this Meat Raffle? And it's become its own adjective. And if we had to be like, is this song Only Saturn is Left enough? We would have gone a totally different direction, and I'm really glad we didn't go that direction. We were in a church space using it as rehearsal, and there's also plenty of equipment that nobody's using at 8 o'clock at night. So we were able to just all play at the same time, play it down, and get some kind of scratch track, which we would record to. We would record individual parts, and Ian did everything on that EP, which is why it's so awesome. He hates listening back to it now, but it's still really cool because it's completely ours. He did all the mixing, all the mastering, all the recording. We had 2 demos that Dan Austin, shout out Dan, good friend of ours, good friend of the band, but he did the recording and mixing in that. So if you're able to find those demos, there's a little bit different, but Ian did a huge part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I did a little like Pro Tools in college and had mixed a little bit here and there, but it wasn't something I was good at. I still wouldn't say it's something I'm good at. It's challenging, right? Like anyone who's tried to record themselves in their bedroom knows how like soul crushing it can be to hear your own vocal, or like get up the courage to be like, all right, bro, let's do it again. That didn't sound good, and not be a jerk about it, right? Like there's a lot that goes into that. And honestly, like I learned so much. Like I could tell you just by listening which song I started with and which song I ended with, because you can just hear the progress that I was able to make just my own ear, and what Meet Raffle was, right? We were forming that as we were making the album. But I give these guys all the credit for like running it again and putting up with the weird way that I did things, because I just had to make it work for me, right? No one would record things the way I recorded things. Period. I told our engineer, Jay, who's recording with us on this upcoming album, I was like, Jay, I never want you to hear my EP. Never. Like, I want you to respect me a hell of a lot more than that, right? I just don't want you to ever hear it. And he's like, done. And shout out. That's why Jay rules. He's like, I will absolutely never listen to that. But no, it was a work of like love, and we needed something to focus on. I did, at least during the middle of like, I think we finished recording in August 2020, and it was just like a nice thing to have a focus on, and to know that I could trust these guys to be honest, and that they were doing their best, but they were the ones who often were like, Ian, it's good enough. It's perfect. We cannot hear that stupid mistake that you talk about. And so, yeah, it was fun. And Evan and Nick had, worked with a couple of other full bands before and recorded. So I'm sure it was a pretty different experience for both of them in the middle of that too.
It was definitely different, but it was a really cool experience because, like Ian said, Nick and I had recorded in different settings before, but I don't think either of us had ever recorded inside of a church, and we're able to use that sort of environment to our advantage that way. But it's cool, like seeing how things progress, like the changing of the sounds from like one mix to another, and also just the change in our sound over time too. Luke mentioned how, often at practice we'll ask, is it Meet Raffle-y or something like that? Because we had a hard time really pinning down what our genre was. Like, we knew we were a rock band at the core, but it's just like, what kind were we? So the first album ended up being very proggy sounding. And then now the stuff that we've written for the second album that we're sort of beginning in the process of recording, that one took very like an emo turn, kind of. The songs are much like darker and more like punch you in the gut type of stuff, I guess. So it's been cool to see how every bit of the band evolves, whether it's how we record or mix, or just how the sound changes, and watching us all grow as musicians in the process.
As Ian was mentioned earlier, we got the opportunity to work with Jay Zabricki at GCR. He's a great guy. I mean, he does professional bands, but he's willing to help local bands too, and it's just great to have the opportunity to work with him. And we had such a good experience recording our single Tight Closed Fist, which is going to be part of the next album, but it is on our media on Facebook, Spotify. But we're really proud of the work we were able to do with that single, and Jay was just a great guy to work with. He loves music and he loves working with people, and so if you're a local band and you want to get into recording, you can reach out to Jay, because he knows what he's doing and he's a great guy. So.
Well, the cool thing about the Buffalo music scene is it sort of seems like everybody knows everybody to a certain degree, or if like somebody, that person knows somebody else. So it's a very intertwined, connected music community. Some of our favorites, obviously Jay, he has been awesome. I mean, he's one of these guys that is obviously extremely intelligent in what he does. He can be very meticulous in how he has things set up, but in the best way. And he's also hilarious. I mean, the day that we got together to record Tight Closed Fist from start to finish, he had us in stitches the entire time. So it was a lot of fun. And, you know, a lot of our friends are in bands too, so it's been cool to like set up shows with groups like Ratchet Snacks and Great White Plains, Market Research, and just kind of forming those stronger bonds with people and just having a lot of fun with your friends.
Whatever the next song is, that's my new favorite song. Because like, as Evan was saying, it's like I just love the part of like, the curiosity of, okay, like what are we gonna do with this part and how we are gonna evolve as a band, and just, that's the most enjoyable thing for me, is like the next thing. I do like even the old album we have and some of the past recording, but I also like just the creativity of what's the next song going to be, or this part, and that's what's exciting for me. So I would say every new song is my favorite.
Means to an End is one coming up on our new album. It's very sad, and but it's like a banger too, right? Like it's fun. There was this little group of like 12 musicians that I connected with in 2020, and one dude would send out a prompt, and it was just like, here's the title of the song, work backwards from there and write a song and send it to the group by the end of the week. You had like a week to write a song, and it was just kind of like almost like a book club for songwriting. And it didn't last very long, because that's a lot. Like, to write a song in a week that's reasonable to share with people, it was horrible in that regard. But it was super fun and challenging. And this song was this folk song, right? It was like this 3-chord folk song, and I forgot about it. And then when we came back to record for the second album, I remembered that it was there. So I had like all the lyrics there, and I literally just removed every other lyrical line, and it still had the like lyrical meat it needed. And then we made it into like a rock ballad, and it was really cool to like take what I had seen as one thing and throw it into the meat grinder and see what came out, right? And that's probably my favorite to play, because we get to go, you know, fairly soulful, and Evan gets a sweet solo, and we just kind of rip, and that's a really fun one.
The writing process in general has just been like one of my favorite things, because like you can come to band practice with an incomplete song or just a piece of it, and these guys will add each of their elements to it and make it something really cool. You know, I would come home from now the band practices are at my house, but like I would come home from the band practices when they were at the church, and I'd always just tell my wife, I'd just be like, I love writing with these guys. It's so much fun. In terms of like my favorite to play, Tight Close Fist is definitely up there. But I think my number one right now is probably the one where Ian and I he typically plays bass and I typically play guitar, but we switched for a couple of the songs, one of them in particular, Out of Reach. It's kind of the song that we've only released a live version so far, but it's kind of the song that connects the two albums, in my opinion, because it has, you know, the more aggressive, angsty sound of our new album, but at the same time, it's still a prog song like the first album, so it's kind of the connecting point, and it was also one of the first songs we wrote for the new album.
Like what Evan said is, you know, he can come with something and throw it to us, and we'll, you know, cook it up. But I remember having this like chord progression fully formed in my head and bringing it to band practice, and Evan's like, oh, I got something for that. So I guess actually it's the same thing from two different perspectives, but existence is what I'm talking about. That's probably my favorite to play, because the progression, it's just like, I come from like a classical composition background, and it's one of the ones where I was able to like drop in some stupid like music theory college level stuff. It's just a real fun progression. And it also, the lick at the beginning started as a complete joke where I would play this stupid little ditty on the piano while these two were setting up some guitar stuff, and then Nick would add a drum beat to it. So it started as a joke, and it also, in the middle, is a joke, and it's an extremely angsty song when you listen to what Evan is like screaming about. So that's just really fun to play. We play a lot of good bar. Yeah. And the staff there are outstanding. Like, that's one of the biggest reasons we keep going back. Like, the crowd turnout is always really good, and you know, the door staff are some really solid people, and the sound guys, like all the sound guys they get. So like, good bar all around is
good.
Dope.
Yeah, and I love playing good bar. And like Luke was saying, everybody from the bartenders to the security, I mean, they're just all wonderful people. So, and they make that venue really, a great place. So I would say good bar for me.
Yeah, definitely good bar. It seems to be unanimous as our favorite place to play. Nietzsche's is fun too. This past summer we played at a festival my friend Andy Swift, shout out, put together called Rock the Shore, and he's putting together another one this year all the way up near Lake Ontario. And they haven't quite announced the bands yet, but there could be a chance you see Meat Raffle there again this summer in July. But that's really fun. So
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of good bars. Obviously, awesome. I think it was really we hit a stride with them. We've opened at other places, we've headlined at other places, but it really does feel comfortable. Boy, they need to get an elevator, but that's about it. That's all of our friends are, they come and some of the security guards will talk to us about our music, the new songs we write. They're engaged with that, which is really sweet. Rock the Shore was pretty fun. There was a point where there were two little girls moshing, and it was the best moment of my life as a musician, was just watching these two little kids mosh to our one song called Panic, the first song we ever wrote, and it was awesome. Radiohead, Foo Fighters, Meat Raffle.
Oh.
Was I speaking for was I was trying to speak for what I guessed Meat Raffle would agree on. That's my guess.
mine was actually pretty close to that. I was going to say Radiohead is the headliner, Muse in between, and Meat Raffle opening it up.
Interesting.
I love Foo Fighters. I mean, there's no band like the Foo Fighters, so I would actually say that would not be a good lineup because I wouldn't want to be on the same show as them. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I agree.
What about your second one?
Oh, second one? I do like Radiohead, and I think there would probably be some other bands that would be options, but Radiohead is a great pick too.
I'd probably have to say Radiohead as well. Foo Fighters is okay. They're not my favorite band.
Weezer?
Yeah, I love Weezer. No, I would say Meat Raffle with. I think I'd have to go with Radiohead. I would throw out Queens of the Stone Age.
Ooh, okay.
Strong choice.
Thank you. Like I said, I have that classical music background, so I bring some of that. Shout out Aaron Copeland, rest in peace. But in terms of style, as far as my own playing, Ben Folds. If you know who Ben Folds is, and then you go listen to how I just smash the keyboard. I don't play it like a piano player. I'd say that he's my biggest influence, personally.
I mean, I love all music. It depends on what kind of mood I'm in. I'll go from jazz to heavier stuff. I think I might, if we had a spectrum of how heavy our interest is for music, I'm probably on the heavier end of music. I love microwave and some heavier bands like that too. And I actually play with another band called Of Night and Light, and shout out to my boys from Of Night and Light. And and that's what I love about it too, is because I can do some more anger and some heavier stuff with them, but then some melodic rock tunes with these guys. So I think there's a lot of influences. I want to be able to name a lot right now. So
for me, I think it just kind of depends on what it is. I mean, outside of Meat Raffle, I do a lot of folk music type stuff, and I play in a couple other bands occasionally. But in terms of Meat Raffle, the writing process for the new album and just other stuff we've been working on, I've been listening to a lot of Microwave and Death Cab for Cutie. I kind of get in that zone for the writing process. But yeah, those have been the big ones for me on this one.
Yeah, I think I'd echo Microwave. I think they're, I don't know, just interesting lyrics, writing from a place of just dealing with a lot. You can tell they've dealt with a lot, and that music is a place to process that. That's what it is for me as well. And then I would echo folk as a part of my influences. I love there's a little band called The Novel Ideas from Massachusetts, one of those New English states. You know what I'm saying? And they're really great. They are no mas. But they were a really big influence for me as a teenager. And honestly, you can definitely hear. I was a worship leader for about 5 years at a church, and a couple different churches actually, and been leading work. I got into music as a teen to play at my church growing up, and so you can definitely hear the the influence there if you're paying attention, or probably more if you were in it, right? And if you were a part of a church band at any point in your life. And so those are some pretty big influences for me. And I think it all kind of comes down to make a pretty weird grouping of influences. And I think that's why Meat Raffle as a name stuck, right? That's why it stuck, because you never know what you're going to get. But it's always gonna be on brand, right? It's always that's it,
You mentioned the church music aspect of it, and that's definitely something that influenced a lot of us. I mean, Ian, myself, and Luke are all former church worship leaders, and Nick is a longtime church musician. So, that style definitely played into how we write. I remember the first time I showed my mom what Meat Raffle sounded like, she was just like, "It sounds like worship music," and I was like, oh. I told these guys, and they all had that same reaction of oh.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, with all music, there's strengths and things that can be shown through. So with worship music, there is a big emphasis on dynamics, and that's helped us a lot as a band, is that emphasis on dynamics. So, I mean, not to, knock any kind of music, because I think each and every kind of genre has its strengths, so.
There's a lot of awesome local music that needs to be supported and listened to, and you can go to a show at Mohawk Place or Good Bar or Nietzsche's or anywhere and just enjoy yourself and have a good time, which is pretty sweet. I grew up in a pretty small town, and we didn't have that level of access to music, and I think for as big as Buffalo can be sometimes, population-wise, whatever, it's pretty close-knit, and especially the music scene. And so that means that we can be on a bill with Nick's other band, and Nick has to play 2 sets, and that sucks for him. But it's great for everybody else, right? Because you get just such a richness of different bands you get to hear and appreciate. And there are people willing to appreciate the weirdness of a band named Meat Raffle and much more respectable bands as well, right? And it's just an honor to share the stage with all these other people and see what they're coming up with. So I don't know, just shop local.
Shout out everybody.
Yeah, shout out to everybody.
That was Meat Raffle. I'll have all the links to their music down below. And for Music Monday, I'm Adam Duke, News 4.